I was given the chance and the opportunity to discuss decarbonization in the next 5 minutes, so bear with me. It's not going to be, can you hear me? Better? Testing, good. So I was given the opportunity to discuss decarbonization in the next 5 minutes. Although it's an immense challenge, like the challenge we have ahead of us with decarbonization, I'll try to be comprehensive and quick. First of all, I'd like to start by saying what an incredible opportunity this is to be amongst you in 3D. In this lovely event, again, hats off to the organizers, a very, very lovely Capital Link event. Always a pleasure being here. So, Decarbonization Challenge, we kind of started this story with some sort of an apprehensive attitude because we, as an industry, we were introduced to this challenge a couple of years ago, even longer than that, and we started by trying to map out what is that challenge. And what we have seen is that 2 or 3 years ago, based on the scenarios that we were looking and the base case scenarios, as they were calling them, and the announced policies that were supposed to be implemented 2 or 3 years ago, we have seen, even back then 2 years ago, that the 2050 goal of 50% reduction in greenhouse gases will be immensely challenging if the whole value chain in which shipping is active does not contribute. So we need a value chain game in order to address that decarbonization aspect. And what you see even with the latest forecast that we have seen is the fact that if the ambition changes to net zero, that would even be also challenging. And we also started mapping what the impact of these short-term measures will be, the ones that are going to be starting and kicking off in the next year, where almost 90% of the global fleet will have to explore some sort of an improvement option in order to comply with the requirements. Let alone what we will have to face with the upcoming operational carbon intensity requirements like the CII, where the ships, the global shipping, global fleet will find itself in a non-favorable, most of the global fleet, around 40%, in a non-favorable rating when this regulation starts. So we started this journey with an apprehensive attitude. We have also seen all sorts of complexity emerging with multi-stakeholder reporting requirements and decarbonization trajectories being posed by different areas in this stakeholder landscape. We briefly said a few words about the IMO, but you also have on the chartering side, decarbonization initiatives. You have port authorities that are looking at environmental performance. You have regional regulations that are emerging and are creating their own type of requirements. And those regional regulations and all this landscape gives birth to what we call the emerging value chains, hydrogen and carbon. What you will see also in the literature is the fact that the hydrogen value chain and the carbon value chain are considered as the building blocks, the cornerstones of the energy transition, mainly because they will provide what, and I'm choosing my words very wisely here, the tokens of the energy transition. So that hydrogen atom, that hydrogen molecule that will actually provide the solutions for alternative fuels, and the carbon value chain that will actually accelerate, based on the studies, the energy transition. So, how do we make sense of all that? In the next seconds, it's hard to wrap the decarbonization strategy initiative in a few words, but it all starts with steps. First of all, benchmarking, developing an emissions and carbon profile of vessels and fleets that we operate, and therefore, by doing that, taking the next step, considering options either in adopting energy efficiency technologies or at some point setting the milestones for the phase out of ships and the adoption of alternative fuels. it all starts with that benchmarking that I mentioned earlier, which considers the combined decarbonization trajectory. What do we mean by that? We mean the combined requirement, taking into consideration all the requirements that a vessel and a fleet will have actually to incorporate in its strategy, in its performance, in order to align itself with the decarbonization agenda. And you have to benchmark against that, and then based on that, looking at the time domain, develop your technological and operational decisions and options. While you implement your strategy, a very crucial thing is to have a robust monitoring tool, a digital platform that gets all the necessary data to you. It provides decision support, and it directs towards the corrective actions that need to take place in order to keep the alignment with that combined trajectories that we just mentioned. And we have seen that there are also different schemes that create the opportunity of monetizing this type of adherence to the alignment or even performing better. The other thing that emerged over the last year and a half was a discussion about how we use frameworks in order to build, therefore, our corporate strategy around decarbonization. But why do we actually need that? Mainly because decarbonization is such a complex topic that it will cut across, if not all of the activities and the functions that we have in the company, most of them certainly. So by making a choice on a technical or an operational change on the decarbonization side, of course, it will actually affect the environmental aspect, but it will also affect the social, what type of skills we need to bring on board, how do we diversify so that we can actually tackle the challenge of decarbonization? Do we have to invest in more digital talent in order to use this type of digital platforms that I just mentioned? And how do we train our people in the new technologies, say that you are implementing a new type of alternative fuel? How do we prepare our companies in order to also manage the change that will come? And of course, that will also affect how you implement governance, what type of systems you have on board the company, in order to address systemic and non-systemic risks, for example. So this is more or less planned out on a framework that uses these three words, ESG, and what we have actually left outside, which is last but not least, of course, is that economic thing. You cannot have a sustainable solution, you cannot have a sustainable business plan if it takes you out of business. And therefore, this type of frameworks help in identify how you incorporate all those complex KPIs in a corporate strategy that allows for proper planning and shows annual improvement. And I did spend a bit more time on explaining the decarbonization strategy, but I think it's worth it, and I could actually stay here and explore this even further. But I'd like to also raise the fact that now we are turning the page from having an apprehensive stance against decarbonization in exploring what type of opportunities might emerge. We do identify that there are transition risks, energy transition risks that have to be identified and incorporate in business planning. But we also have to investigate how this emergence of the value chains could actually present opportunities for shipping. Shipping in the value chains that I just described will be an enabler. What type of new opportunities will emerge with the scaling up of these value chains? Shipping is going to be the key for addressing all those aspects. I did go a bit beyond my time, but I hope that I have given you some food for thought for the next session, and I'm always available for questions and a very, very insightful discussion here at Capital Link. Thank you very much.